those of you that are not familiar with the HLA is a leadership, management, and quality improvement training institute offering bespoke courses and advisory services. For more information about our organization, please check out our website, www.hlaafrica.org. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speakers for today's session, Understanding the Business of Healthcare. So I will read their short bios and then turn the floor over to them. So our first guest speaker and faculty member is Rosemary. She is a finance lead at the Healthcare Leadership Academy, and in this capacity drives the activities of the finance department to help achieve both the operational and strategic requirements of the organization. Prior to her current role, she was a finance manager at Cummins Energy Solutions, Nigeria, where she managed the statutory financial and management reporting process of the business. Our next guest speaker and HLA faculty is Adeshola. Adeshola is the program lead at the private sector and private sector engagement lead at Health Strategy and Delivery Foundation. His areas of expertise include healthcare business management and advisory, audit, and business assurance, risk management, private equity investment, IT, and financial advisory. Adeshola, welcome. For our other panelists, which happen to be HLA alumni, I will start with Dr. Nuruddin. Dr. Nuruddin is a consultant obstetric and gynecologist and did his postgraduate training at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. He is the current HOD of Obs and Gyne and the Department MD at Etiosa, Maternal and Child Center. Dr. Nuruddin is a fellow of the West African College of Surgeons and an HLA alumnus. Dr. Nuruddin, welcome. Our next panelist is Dr. Rosamond. Dr. Rosamond is the Chief Medical Director of Cepha Specialist Hospital in Kaduna and is also a consultant and professor of pediatrics nephrology at the Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital in Zaria. She sits on the medical board of several award-winning dialysis service providers in Nigeria and is also a member of the leading journal of pediatric nephrology in Africa. Dr. Rosamond, welcome. And last but not least, Dr. Tolu Tope. Dr. Tolu Tope is currently employed by Lagos State Health Service Commission and the head of the State Physical and Medical Rehabilitation Unit of the General Hospital of Lagos in Nigeria. Dr. Tolu Tope is also an HLA alumnus. Welcome. So, to our distinguished panelists, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to get started. So, to all of the panelists, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm just going to give each of you 1 minute to just tell us briefly about yourselves and the work that you're doing. So let us start with Dr. Nuruddin. Let me unmute you, sorry. Dr. Nuruddin, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, yes.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, all. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm also happy to be with my lecturer, my teacher at Ahmadu Bello University, Professor Akuse. It's my pleasure. As you said, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. I work at the moment at the Etiosa Maternal and Child Center. I'm the Deputy Medical Director, also the head of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. I also double as the Director of Clinical Services in my institution. So basically, because of the high mortality at the Etiosa area, so a new center was established here, mainly a maternity center, with the aim of reducing the mortality in this part of Lagos State. And so we've been doing that, training our junior colleagues, mentoring consultants, and at least in this area, at least I'm sorry for those that are aware, recently last year, in December last year, Island Maternity, this record some months of no mortality because of the establishment of this center around this area where there's no government hospital except from between Ekpe and Island Maternity. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nuruddin. It's a pleasure to have you. I will give the floor over next to Dr. Tolu Tope. Please welcome, and please just give us a brief introduction.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Alalade. I currently work with Lagos State Health Service Commission and aids the State Physical Medical and Rehabilitation Center, General Hospital, Lagos. As a medical resource medical practitioner with considerable multitask case experience and with increased appreciation of participatory public health management dimension for total healthcare delivery. In addition, I ensure the rights of my clients are guaranteed through universal, and in course of my duty, most of my clients are children of less than 15 and over 60 years of age. My responsibility entails consulting at the clinic of newly referred cases for full assessment before the commencement of physical therapy, review of old cases already on rehabilitation program, monitor the progress of inpatients, and take calls. I'm happily married. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Alalade. I'd like to now give the floor over to Dr. Rosamond. Are you on the call? Okay, I think she may be experiencing some technical difficulties and still hasn't joined. So let me allow the HLA faculty to go ahead and introduce themselves. So Rosemary, the floor is over to you.
Thank you, Awole. Hi, everybody. Good to be here again. My name is Rosemary Gwebike, and I'm the finance lead at HLA, where my key role is really enabling management to make key financial decisions by equipping them with the right visibility into the financial status of the organization. In addition, I also facilitate bespoke healthcare financial management courses at HLA. Prior to HLA, I was an auditor. My passion has always been numbers. I was an auditor with Deloitte for 7 years, where I led financial audits across different industries and led teams from the start to completion of various audits. Transitioning from the Big Four, I joined the power generation industry for 4 years. So it's been an interesting journey for me, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next hour with everybody. I'm looking forward to an interactive session, and we're really excited to hear your questions. Awole, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. I'd like to now, last but not least, open the floor to Adeshola. Please tell us a bit about yourself. Welcome. Adeshola, you're muted. Would you mind unmuting yourself? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We can,
right.
Thank you.
So I'm Adeshola, and I currently lead the private sector engagement team at the Health Strategy and Delivery Foundation. I'm proud to that. I used to work with an investment group called the Harbridge Capital. Harbridge Capital invests in businesses, and at some point we invested in healthcare businesses, and that was what brought me into healthcare about 10 years ago. And I ended up going to work within one of their investee companies in the South. You know, it was a multi-specialist hospital down there in the South. So I worked as the Chief Financial and Operations Officer for the hospital and the other subsidiaries within the group. And I also currently work as one of the facilitators for the healthcare financial management workshop at HLA. Thank you.
Thank you, Adeshola. Welcome. So welcome to all of our distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to encourage everyone to please locate the chat box below. And please type in your questions there. We'll be taking them in the order in which we receive them after I've asked a few questions of the panelists. So the first question actually goes to Adeshola. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a great deal of financial uncertainty for many business owners. Why is it so important now more than ever to be financially savvy, especially if you're running a healthcare organization?
All right, thank you, Annalie. It's more than important, to be financially savvy when you run an organization that is for profit to start with. Same with organizations that are not for profit anyway, because there's no organization that is for loss. And running an healthcare organization in the current situation with the COVID-19 challenges makes it, much more imperative to be financially savvy. I was talking to, a group of doctors, and I said, well, one of the major challenges with the operations currently is the fact that people would rather go to a nightclub during this period than go to an hospital. It's strange, but people seem to believe that, well, you are actually more prone to get infected, when you go to the hospital. So most of the people that are supposed to come in for care now would rather stay at home and take care of themselves. So that puts, more burden, on the healthcare providers in terms of the footfall, So, and there are two ways, to sustain and grow a business. You either increase your revenue, or you manage your costs. So it becomes very challenging to understand, to manage, to increase your revenue, as it were, and to manage the costs within this period. And you cannot, manage what you don't know. So to even understand, you need to know your numbers before you can manage it. So the challenge is, how do you understand your numbers? How do you know your numbers? How well are you doing? What is more profitable to you? Is it your surgery that has better margin, or your pharmacy, or your laboratory? You need to understand your numbers before you can even talk about managing it. And in managing your numbers, you need to look at the cost and say, well, where are the high? What are the cost drivers? Where do I spend more in terms of the cost? Where do I spend less? How do I manage this? Your revenue at the same time, And aside the financial numbers skill, you also need a management skill. I was consulting with a couple of doctors, and like, have you considered, giving people home services? Because people don't want to come to the hospitals now. I would rather that when my baby needs to take immunization, you have an arrangement for a nurse to come into my house, take their vitals, and give them the shot. I won't mind paying, an extra fee for that. So it's become very, very imperative for us, to understand numbers, to understand finance, to understand business management, to know what drives our numbers, and how can we, control it, because another challenge we've had in the past year is the skyrocketing increase in the cost of doing business. Fuel increase, the increase in the cost of importing drugs. Also, even our utility bill has increased significantly because the distribution, the power distribution company has tried to, to price power properly, because it was highly subsidized before, and this has put a big constraint on our practice. So how do we manage our costs? How do we ensure that our utility bill, is not skyrocketing from over the months? Because we need to keep tab of our numbers. So we need to understand our numbers. We need to understand finance, which is the language of business. So it's actually very, very, very imperative at this moment, more than ever before.
Thank you so much for that, Adeshola. I think you touched on a really important point that's slightly related, as you said, to this finance bit, but just about the stigma surrounding COVID-19, how you get it, diagnosis. I think that's something that as healthcare providers, we also need to start, having more of those conversations to reduce that stigma and to get more people into the facilities to access not just COVID-19 testing, but essential healthcare services as needed. So I think that was a fabulous point that you brought up and you've raised. I will bring this next question to Dr. Nuruddin. So many healthcare professionals across Nigeria one day hope to own their own medical facility. However, many of them may not have had the requisite financial management skills to successfully run an institution. As an aspiring business owner, what do you believe are some of the gaps, and why do you feel better positioned to step into the role of a healthcare facility owner now that you've taken the HFM program?
Thank you very much. But one of the targets of almost all health professionals is at one time or the other to be employers of labor, that is by having their own personal health facilities. So unfortunately, a number of healthcare providers, healthcare owners who practice, who open their facility, often don't have the basic requisite knowledge of managing the institution. And that's why sometimes you see hospital that was probably making waves, very popular over time, when the bearer, the person that originated the hospital, created, eventually, when he's no longer practicing, the hospital dies a natural death. That's not supposed to be. In that case, there need to have basic knowledge of what we call financial management systems, for which you need to organize. It shouldn't be a one-man show. In a number of hospitals, the medical director will be the accountant. When patients pay, even HMO payments, they pay to their personal accounts. That will obviously affect the progress of that hospital. So there is need to learn or the basic knowledge of running the hospital. I want to group it under this one. That record keeping is very important. Yes, well-established hospitals keep record, but some don't have enough time. If the medical director is so busy, accountants may not be able to go through some of the message for that day, sales for that day. So if you didn't have an in-house accountant that's supposed to take note of that, or a financial director, a financial controller, to manage that side, so that he can probably supervise it, the system, the hospital may not function well at the end of the day. It's also very important to keep records of transactions. You need to have vouchers. Don't just say, okay, maybe a relation present, doctor, please, I'm broke. My junior sister want to pay school fees. Just say, okay, go and meet accountant, or just pay from the hospital account. It's not supposed to be. There should be a proper way of keeping records. If any money is spent, there should be proper record of vouchers, payment vouchers. You must have a cash book. Any receipts will be documented. There's also very important to keep record of services. No, as was you said earlier, data is very important. How many patients, you have different departments, inpatient, outpatient, antenatal clinic, theater. So we want to know, have a record of how many cases are done, how many patients were presented at the antenatal clinic, how many patients were seen at the outpatient, so that you can now plan. You can have a record, you study the patient flow, where the income is coming, where you are making income, so that it also helps you when you are now making budgets and planning. So when you have the records and the data, that will help you in a little bit. Then governance is also very, very key. I know that when hospitals start newly, probably because of the financial burden, the employer, the healthcare facility provider, the MD, may not have all the money to employ all the requisite staff, accounts department, pharmacies. They can start in a low key, get maybe a key officers, accountant who takes care of the account department, then if not the pharmacy, somebody that you oversee that, so that you can have a clear-cut distinctions. This surgery department who is overseeing, like have a mini head. Then it's also very important to have a handbook for the staff. So when the staff, you have a policy for employment, what category of employee you want to employ, what's the qualification, the training that is expected for before you employ. Then the staff they should also have rules and regulations. Sometimes etiquette of dressing, how to behave to patients. Of course, you have to be empathic. So these are things that should be well written down, so that if any patient, any staff that are ill will know the repercussion of such. Then also, it's also good to have like a board of directors. Yes, I know in smaller hospitals may be difficult, but you can get people, that friends or colleagues that probably a lawyer or accountants, or if you cannot employ, or auditor, so that they can be having like a mini meeting, probably thrice a year or 4 times a year, so that they can make input into the management, not just saying, okay, as a doctor that doesn't have basic knowledge of accounting, doesn't have basic knowledge of law, or don't have knowledge of drugs. So by doing that, when you meet, these are people that can share their experiences, or those that can even include colleagues that are senior to you that have hospitals. You can share their knowledge. It might even may not be physical meeting, maybe Zoom, or find a way of so I can help them with good records too. There's also need to audit. By auditing, you look at the performance and check the books. It's also very important to have internal control measures. But one of the things that runs down the hospital is if the director that don't have much time to go through to supervise, and people can just steal some of the drugs or some of the reagents in the lab. Maybe there are proper internal measures. We have policy on how all these things should be done, who procures, there should be proper control and assessment of performance, so that at the end of the day, if there's any shortcut or if there's fraud, it can be detected. Budgeting and planning is also key. So if there's no basic knowledge of this financial management system, as I've said, it will be very difficult for a doctor that is us, or a pharmacy or any healthcare professional that's trying to have his own facility to better manage the hospital. And of course, I have the same idea earlier, but when I now went for the training, the HLA training, I now realized that, oh, this having a hospital is beyond just saying, okay, I'm the medical director. So you need to have people that are knowledgeable in running hospitals. Then over time, when you have the basic arrangement and organization, you can now develop. So when the hospital is now growing, you can extend the services, you can extend the number of people that will be employed. You can now probably have, if you want to have an account and an internal auditor specific, a procurement officer as the hospital is growing, so that you have a template, template that is needed for the hospital to grow, which includes, as I've said, proper record keeping and counting, good governance, good internal control measures, budgeting and planning. So from the records, you know, okay, maybe, for example, let's assume in year 2020, you check the records, oh, you had more surgeries, you made more money from surgery, you can now plan ahead. So that maybe you can plan in more resources into the theater, so that that's why money is being generated. And services that are not well, you're not generating more, you probably need to evaluate and see what is the problem when you get some of the issues. And this can only be done by having meetings with people that are experienced. Even stakeholders are also involved in this meeting, so that you can now give suggestions, you can now plan ahead accordingly. And of course, it's very also important to audit the accounts. Of course, maybe at the early stage, it may be difficult to have an external auditor, but with time, as the facility grows, you can extend the services. So I think with the knowledge I acquired during my training at the HLA on health finance management, has broadened my horizon and my knowledge and how to plan in case I want to have my own facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nuruddin. That was a very thorough explanation. So just to recap, we spoke a bit about data decision-making or data-informed decision-making. So understanding, where most of your institution's revenue is coming from, maybe what services are bringing in the most clients, maybe what services are not bringing clients, and using that information to actually inform the kinds of services that your institution will be offering. You also talked a bit about governance and policies, and you spoke a bit about how the HFM program really upskilled your management skills. So thank you very much for that. I know there are many healthcare providers that aspire to own a healthcare institution, and just being a healthcare provider is not enough, as we've heard from you. You definitely need to know the finance and the business behind running the institution. So thank you for that. My next question will go to Dr. Alalade. So financial management can seem daunting, especially for a non-finance person. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience taking the HFM course and how it has helped you in your current work?
Thank you very much. Compliment of the season, and I will say a big thank you for inviting me and be part of the first program for the year. I currently work in the General Hospital Lagos. That's the Physical and Medical Rehabilitation Center. And why I applied for the online financial course is to broaden my scope and to increase my financial management skills, being a non-financial person from the start. And it has assisted me basically in my on my desk in managing day-to-day running of the center, most especially the running course that have sub-heads, and each of the sub-heads, you have to manage it well because you cannot veer anyhow from one sub-head to another. You have to account for it. And it has opened my eyes to see even the reason for putting all these things in each of the sub-heads by the accounting department. So I need to follow it and entail that it's ensured. Basically, I double as the chairman, the diet committee, which looks into the feeding of all patients within the hospital, both at the casualty and in the hospital, and likewise doctors, medical and non-medical doctors on call. I care for them, and the committee itself is made up of I, being the chairman, the accountants, the head of the procurement committee, the head of the procurement, the unit, the head of catering, the head of diet, the dietitian, that's the head, then the store, the head of store, and the secretary, who doubles as the admin person. Basically, when we look at holistically to what the whole hospital, that is the patient, doctors, non-medical doctors, people on call needs to ensure that the diet is ensured and the quality is okay. Being the chairman, looking into the financial aspect of what the catering services and the diet unit present to me, coming in for the financial program, I've broadened my scope and increase my knowledge and widen my eyes to see into the some of the cost drivers that are really negative for the hospital, those leakages that I have to close up. I won't want to go far and expose some of those things here, and it has raised question because doctor, how do you know all these things? You are going too far. You should not do this. You should not do that. It's not like that. It's not like this. But I have to. Even my last meeting last week, I have to sit. I have to. The kitchen woman was telling me this, that. I said no. This is how it's supposed to be. Doctor, how do you know all these things? I mean, it has broadened my scope in management and cut down some irrelevant and some cost drivers that are negative to the establishment. Basically, again, and coming for the HLA program have assisted me in my family business. I come from a background, most of us are doctors. My father is a doctor, he's late. He has a clinic before he died. And on my free time, when I go into the clinic to just look at their books, initially when I draw the ledger, I want you to fill in cost for fuel, cost for transport, this, that. Let me see. The lady in question didn't like it, but later on, she appreciates my my input into telling her to do this, do that. Because at the end of the day, when we look at fueling, as Mr. Adeshola said, we should manage the cost because the revenue is not increasing. So how do I manage the costs? And looking from one of the program we had at during the financial costs, talking about ledgers, what to put in each of the ledgers, the cost, this, that. It has assisted me. For example, I was looking at fueling the car, fueling the generator, fueling the big generator, the 60 kVA, fueling the small generator, the 8.5 kVA. That's just one example. I look at it, we cannot, because what we are making cannot carry what we are doing. So we have to cut down. They say, doctor, no, we have to put on the big generator so that everybody. I said, no, look at it. I won't be able to pay salary at the end of the month. I won't be able to do this. And they were arguing with me. But when it comes, when to pay the salary, they now see that, I mean, it's just like, that's it. Because it's an open door policy. You see it. I mean, that's where money is flying. So we have to block all these loopholes so that if we cannot increase revenue, most especially during this COVID period, then we have to manage the costs. So I would tell any non-medical, I would tell a medical person that have not gone for this course, this is the financial management course, I will advise them to try and enroll, because being a non-medical person, being a non-financial person, we need some of these things to improve our day-to-day running and improve our profit margin and to assist us in management, because one of the pitfalls of we doctors that we think we know everything, but it's not like that. We need that, as my friend said, the deputy director, Dr. Nuruddin, that we need to we are going to bring people together so that we relate together, so that we broaden our scope and we think out of the box, so that we can improve on our administrative skills, because we can't know everything. We need the financial aspect and as well as the admin aspect. So definitely I will advise somebody that have not gone for this course, who is a doctor, to try and enroll. And I'm waiting for the part 2. I've enjoyed part A. I'm waiting for part 2. So when part 2 is available, definitely I will enroll. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alalade. So it's good to hear that you now feel more confident and more comfortable with the numbers. And that's very important, as you said, especially during this time of financial uncertainty, with COVID raging, that it's important that you know what are your main cost drivers and how do you address that so your business can at least stay afloat. So that is very, very encouraging. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'd like to direct my next question to Rosemary. So in your professional opinion, what do you think are the major financial mistakes you see healthcare organizations making, especially in this part of the world? And what would your advice be to them to course correct, excuse me?
Thank you, Awole. I think Dr. Nuruddin and Dr. Alalade have touched on some of the challenges they face in the healthcare organizations. But the basic one is lack of financial management systems. We've seen that not a lot of emphasis is placed on this. And when we say financial management system, what does that mean? It's all encompassing. Your record keeping, you purchase diesel, where are the invoices for that? You have 10 patients that came in today, you have 5 that did surgery, where receipts of issued to these patients, who's keeping those records? Do you have a proper filing system? Do you have an electronic system, or do you do it manually? We find out that some hospitals don't have just basic. When I mean basic, financial record systems, and that's the beginning of a huge problem, because there's no way to track your expenses. There's no way to know how much revenue is being generated. There's no way to even know if there's some kind of fraud or theft going on. So if you don't have your basic financial records in place, that's it's a big problem. So that's one of the challenges we face in this part of the world. The second one actually is lack of internal controls, or even if the internal controls are in place, are they being implemented? How effective are they? So do you have the receptionist who is receiving cash from your patients? Do you also have the same receptionist just managing your petty cash? So the receptionist can just go home with the funds over the weekend and then replace it on Monday. There should be some kind of segregation of duties. So what controls do you have in place to safeguard your assets? What controls do you have in place to mitigate fraud? We need to have these things in place. And even if they're written as policies, who is ensuring that they're being implemented? Who goes back to say, okay, if I'm not here today, are these steps actually followed? Where are the checks and balances, and who is ensuring that these checks and balances are being enforced? Another big issue in this part of the world is taxes. Who's keeping a close eye on this? Payee, are we paying payee when and when it's due? Withholding taxes, we engage these consultants. Are we withholding 5%, 10% as the case may be? Is anybody remitting this to the tax authorities? Who's keeping track of these taxes? At the end of the year, if the taxman comes to our hospital, what do we do? Are books and records in place, or do we want to settle the taxman off the books? We need to pay our taxes, and some hospitals, actually a lot of hospitals, especially the smaller ones, don't do this. So taxes is a big, big issue. Budgeting and planning. Doctors like to spend on impulse, and we know this. So they've been in a small hospital, for a small facility for a long time, and then the practice is growing, which is great. And then the doctor realizes that he needs a bigger facility. Great, but then your rent is going to double, or you need to build a place. Did you plan for this? Or are we just going to go out there and spend on impulse? Capital expenditures need to be planned for. So did we do an annual budget at the beginning of the year or no? Or did we have a quarterly budget? So we need to plan. We all know the famous saying that he who fails to plan does what plans to fail. So if we don't have a budget, and if we don't keep a close eye on this budget and make sure that even when there's a variance in the budget, it can be explained that the variance is not a huge one, then that's a big problem, because that means that your budget is just there, for fancy. So we need to have an annual budget, a yearly budget that we can follow and ensure that the discrepancy of the variance is not that much. And how do you create a budget? You create a budget based on your historical records. So it's back to what I said, basic financial records. If you've not been keeping your financial records, then how are you going to get your historical records, which is what you're going to use to develop your budget? So in the past 5 years as a healthcare organization, if that particular organization hasn't generated $1 million in revenues in the past 5 years, and then year 6, you want to create a budget, and you say you're going to get 10 million naira in revenue, how? It's not realistic, it's not feasible. So we need to make sure that we're creating realistic budgets that will be able to follow, that will help us track our expenses and generate more revenue. Governance, and just governance. What governance do we have in place? What policies do we have when we want to recruit staff? Staffing policies. We need an accountant. We need a receptionist. Do we just go out and recruit our relative? We've seen cases where that has happened, and it has actually burned some organizations. So when you recruit an individual, you want to make sure that you have what recruitment policies do you have in place? Does the person match does the person match the JD? Does the person qualifications match the JD, the job descriptions? Or are we just recruiting that person because it's a friend's friend or a family member? So let's make sure that we have a hiring policy in place for when we're ready to recruit our staff. And it doesn't matter, it can be as a receptionist, it can be your accountant. But we find out that people just recruit people based on personal relationships or personal connections. Okay. The last one is financial reporting. It's very important. But what is the basis of your financial reporting? It goes back to basic financial records. Okay. So on a monthly basis, what does your accountant provide for you? Do you have a monthly package? And that monthly package comes with income statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow. If you pick up your income statement, are you able to see what your major cost drivers are? We've talked about major cost drivers. Are you able to see your different revenue streams? Does it make sense to you or it doesn't make sense to you? Okay, so most times we find that, places don't have financial reporting, the monthly financial package. So there's nothing to look at. There's nothing to compare. So I can't compare what I brought in the month of January to anything in June. So, but if you have your adequate financial records in place and your proper financial reporting, then you can compare like for like. So I can pick up my January pack and I can pick up my June pack and I can do a comparison. Or if I want to see what my variances are, I can just spill them out and I can see what my major cost drivers are in those 2 different months. So again, we've seen taxes is a big issue, not having basic financial records, just not having a budget, and also a board of directors. Board of directors, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It doesn't have to be, made up of, like one of the doctors said, just doctors, but you want people that will hold you accountable. Accountability is key in running a business. So you want to get people on your board, and it doesn't have to be 10 people, 2, 3, 4 people. Just have a quarterly meeting, and just have a board of directors meeting, and people that will ask you the right questions. Where is the business headed? Where is this practice headed? How much growth have we made in so months since the last meeting we had? You want people that will question you. You want people that will steer you in the right direction. So I would encourage the hospital owners on here. Just have a board. Like I said, 3 or 4 people, and quarterly meetings are okay. You can start with quarterly meetings or twice a year as a startup. Just it will steer you in the right direction. Yeah, so I will do that on my part.
Wow, Rosemary, thank you so much for that. Very, very insightful. So you talked a bit about taxes, about proper record keeping, which seems to be a common theme here, checks and balances, planning, and of course, having the right governance in place. So thank you for that. That was very, very insightful. I'd also now like to bring this question to our 2 faculty members, Adeshola and Rosemary. So maybe you can take it, Adeshola first and then Rosemary. But as we mentioned earlier, you both are faculty members of the HFM workshop. Can you tell us a bit more about the course and what students can expect to learn and who the program is for?
All right, thank you, Anuli. So as the name implies, it's a healthcare financial management workshop. So it's been set up, as a workshop. Normally we do this, the physical workshop over 3 days, but we currently run it virtually over 4 weeks actually now. So what we do basically is to introduce you, to finance basically within the healthcare environment. How do you ensure that you set up a proper financial management systems, that is sustainable, that is reliable, and efficient. How do you, ensure that your record keeping, they are prompt and up to date. How do you implement proper controls, checks and balances, segregation of duties, how do you safeguard your assets? How do you prepare budgets? How do you monitor your budget? How do you do variance analysis? How do you analyze your budget? How do you also analyze financial statements? If you look at financial statement, just at the face value of it, looking at it, can you determine whether you are keeping too much stock? You are keeping too little stock. Can you determine whether your working capital is adequate or inadequate? Can you determine whether you are investing enough in your business or not? Just by looking at the numbers. The numbers are not just numbers. As I always say, the numbers say something. So when you look at the numbers, how do you determine who is more profitable? You look at 2 numbers from 2 different organizations. How do you know which one is more profitable? How do you know which one is more efficient in how they run the business? So those are the things that we'll discuss. As I said, this used to be a 3-day physical training program, but since COVID started, we converted it to a virtual learning session, and it's actually more beneficial in the sense that what we now do is that what we go through on day 1 when we're doing the physical session, you have the opportunity to go through this on your own. So it's self-paced over a whole week. So you can actually go through it 3 times, 4 times, and jot down your questions, the concerns that you have, things that are not clear to you. And you can also chat with us. We have an online learning module where while you are jotting down these issues, while you are having this concern, you can chat, we can respond to your chat. And at the end of every week, we have a live session like this where we try to go through the learning all over again and then answer your questions. So it's good that you will have gone through it on your own, have your questions, have the gray area highlighted. Then when we come together, you are hearing this thing maybe for the 4th time because you've gone through the learning for that particular week. Then the following week too, we move to what should be day 2. Then you go through it. I mean, we have people that are able to go through it as many as 5 times. So they understood everything, quite well before the live sessions, and they were able to ask questions, So I actually see this as, more beneficial, than the physical class, which is just 3 days, whatever you pick in that 3 days, and that's it. For this, it's online. You have your login password. You log onto it. You can lie down on your bed at 7 p.m. And go through a particular topic. You can wake up in the morning while you're having breakfast, go through another one. Jot down your issues, and go through it over and over again. So that's the way the course has been structured currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemary?
Yes. So like Adeshola mentioned, it's a 4 weeks course. For those of us that are familiar with Coursera, it's the same manner, it's self-paced. And then we have a weekly facilitator interactive session with Adeshola and myself, where we review real life cases in the context of leveraging adult learning. So you're bringing your real life cases, and we profile suggestions to you as well. The next cohort, I'm really excited about this. It's coming up on the 15th of February. That's in less than a month. And it runs through 12th of March. So please, I would really encourage everybody here. It's for anybody in the healthcare space who wants to better understand the business of healthcare. So if you're a hospital owner, CMDs, your accountant, your finance, even your operations personnel, I would really recommend this course, because again, we start from the foundation and then we go in depth. Like Adeshola has mentioned, it's self-paced, so you can just pull out your laptop, log in, spend 15 minutes a day, and then by the time we meet as a group, usually on Fridays for 2 hours, you have questions which we address. Its current price is 49,900 Naira. It's quite affordable for what you're going to be getting. So I look forward to seeing as many of us in this cohort. It's from the 15th of February to the 12th of March, which is in less than a month. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Adeshola, Rosemary. I would now like to open the floor up to any of our audience members. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to type them into the chat box. We only have a few more minutes left, so we'd be happy to take any of your questions that you may have. As we wait for questions, though, I'd like to pose this question and/or comment to any of the panelists. So I know that in the HFM course, you discussed a bit about succession planning, which I know that is something that's quite relevant, especially in this part of the world. And for a lot of healthcare owners, they wonder, maybe their children are not in the business, or whatever it is, who's going to take over after they have retired. Can you just talk a bit about why succession planning is important and how one goes about doing that as we wait for some questions? Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I know I didn't give it to a specific person, but maybe a faculty member can address that, or a panelist if you have any thoughts.
Let me say one or two things. So this is one area that what I can say is that most doctors, it's a one-man show business, and I think succession planning should be inculcated into our program, and likewise admin and some financial aspects into our course when we were in the university. Because what kills most private hospitals out of the demise of the owner is adequate succession planning, which I see most of them is a one-man show. And another thing that kills most of this business is marriage. When there are more than one or two, when more than one wife, succession planning cannot be adequately planned for. But I don't think that should be a problem. It now depends on the origin of the doctor relating with others. According to Rosemary said, that when you have a board that encompasses different people with diverse minds, diverse, so they can assist the medical director so that adequate planning could be entailed from day one. That even if the doctor or the owner of the business is not there for 1 or 2 days, even for a week, the business can survive itself. And even if the person now dies eventually or anything, the business can replicate itself and fly high. Because I can tell you categorically, it's not quite easy coming up from a medical family. I don't want to say this, that, but I think is one aspect that needs to be looked into our curriculum. More of a little bit of admin, a little bit of finance, maybe small as HLA has introduced to we doctors, and it's a little bit of admin succession planning, because it's one aspect that there are many hospitals around. Immediately after the demise of the owner, the hospital tries to survive, flying hospitals. So, but some hospitals are doing well, but I think they can do more, because we doctors think about it's me, and I don't think it's good for the business. Thank you.
Can I add?
Sure, go ahead, Dr. Nuruddin.
Okay, sorry, actually that would have been my last point. I was trying to keep to time. Now, succession planning is actually another area that one needs to pay attention to right from the beginning. As the hospital grows, the medical director or the owner should put in place mechanism by which you have a succession. Whereby some of the staff, key staff in the hospital, can be encouraged to go for trainings such as this kind of training. If you have staff in different departments, ask them to go. If there is training, and if they are showing interest, we include them in the day-to-day management of the hospital. They will have a buy-in, and they can take it as if they will own the hospital. And as time goes by, it can be given more responsibility. And one can, at the same time, document that, okay, in case there's any case of my demise or for future reasons, these officers should take over from me. Not necessarily the children, as you said, most children now, they don't even want to study medicine. That's my son, we also know medicine, you're not always around, you are this. So let's have people among the staff, key staff that are dedicated in the institution, can be encouraged to go for training and build capacity, so that because they analyze the system, they know most of the clients, they know the goal of the hospital, they know the vision of the hospital, and they can follow through. And with that, most likely, if the owner is not even around, the hospital can continue, and the institution, not even hospital alone. And that's why we have issues of when big hospitals and institutions across the world. Who created Liver Brothers? GE Electric, First Bank, UBA. It is not the person that those are created that started it, managing it now. So from the beginning, we can have like a policy also that, okay, key officers can be included as they show interest, those that work with you for years, 5 years, 3 years, so that they can have a buy-in, take it more serious than to just collect salary and say, okay, just let me go. And I'm also now next available flight either to UK or Canada or America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nuruddin. Rosemary, I know you have a comment.
Yes.
And I think, okay, because I have one question here, but go ahead.
Just a quick one, because I know we're pressed for time. So with succession planning, we need to be intentional. We need to deliberate. And so how do we do that? So we have, in an organization, you have employees who are high achievers or high performing. Identify them, and then let them shadow you. So if you think this individual has what it takes to step into your shoes and fill that gap when you retire, then let the person begin to shadow you. Provide trainings like Dr. Nuruddin said, and then, create a merit-based system whereby employees are recognized. Because when an employee is appreciated for the work that has been done, they're encouraged. We're all human beings, and we like to be appreciated. We know that encourages us. So if we have a merit-based system, if we have employees that are being high performing employees that have been recognized, that we want to step into our shoes, let's go ahead and train them. Let's provide them with the resources that they need to fill that gap. when we retire. And it's funny that you asked this question now only because this year, HLA is going to be offering a succession planning course. So we're hoping to roll that out sooner than later. And we will definitely advertise it. We'll advertise it to the alumni and the group at large, because we think that's a huge, huge gap that needs to be filled in the healthcare industry.
Thank you so much, Rosemary and Dr. Nuruddin and Dr. Alalade for your contributions. I just have one more question. It's from Ijoma, and it will be the last question since we are out of time. But her question is, health insurance schemes is a serious issue in providing services to their clients. Most of them own or skip payments. How do we manage the HMO to be prompt in their payments of either the capitation or fee for service? So maybe Adeshola and or Rosemary, if you wouldn't mind addressing that question.
All right, thank you. So, I mean, this is an interesting question. It's actually a question that almost every, private provider, want to ask most of the time. The HMO services is becoming more and more, important, to healthcare service provision, because it's actually difficult for people to pay out of pocket. And ultimately, everybody is talking about the universal health coverage, universal health coverage, universal health coverage. So the idea, we have a whole session on this actually in our training, but just to give an overview, the health, I mean, the HMO relationship has to be properly managed. So what I did when I was running an hospital was to actually set up what I call the HMO services unit. So I have a unit that all they do, is to ensure that the HMO administration is properly, carried out. So from the tariff, to billing, to following up for payment, to reconciliation, and to even what we call deciding not to do business with an HMO again. You are allowed them to make that decision to say, okay, this particular HMO, we don't want to do business with you again because you are not keeping to the terms of the engagement. But what you see in most private practices is that the HMO relationship is just left to chance. The medical director, is the one that gets alerted when they pay. It doesn't even know how much is their bill. They don't know how much is outstanding. Nobody keeps record of bills and payments. Nobody follow up on short payments, because what I realized, when I went to run an hospital is that most times these guys don't pay the bill that you send to them. They don't pay everything. So you send them a bill of 100,000 for January. When they are paying for January, they're going to pay 65,000 and keep quiet. So you need to have a system that ensures that these bills are checked, against payments. And when they are in short payment, you need to have an allowance. Say, okay, if the short payment is just 2%, well, we're fine with it. But if it's above this particular, we have this documented. It's actually written down to say this is our HMO management policy, and we keep to it. To say if you send a bill out, within so number of months and it's not paid, then there's a problem. We start letting you know that we're going to stop. So we send you a mail first, then we send you a letter, dispatch and acknowledge that you received it, that we're going to stop providing services to you. So you've set, the bar in terms of this is the minimum I require from you. This is how much you can hold me. This is how long you can hold me for. This is the tariff, and this tariff is signed, and updated whether every 24 months or every 18 months, so that your tariff reflects the current situation in terms of the cost of providing the services. So it's something that needs to be properly managed, and as I said, we actually have a whole session on HMO administration in our training, so that's the way I say it.
Okay, thank you so much, Adeshola, for that. I would like to thank, unfortunately we're out of time, but I would like to thank all of our listeners and of course our panelists. Thank you so much for a very insightful and engaging session. For those of you that are interested in the course, please check the chat box. Liz will post it again where you can sign up for the HFM course. For those of you that would like to find out more about the HLA, please visit our website, www.hlaafrica.org. Thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to having you at our next webinar. Take care and have a wonderful evening. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.